Yeah, so as you guys know, we currently set the RFR live for the 2024-2025 NRNSA grant program. And basically, this is an opportunity to be able to receive any questions by you guys and have them answered. We will do our best to answer any questions now, but for anything we're unsure of, we are going to be accepting questions through the 13th, I believe. Um, Let me double check that date. Yep, we'll be accepting questions through 5 p.m. on Friday, September 13th in relation to this grant opportunity, with official answers to all of those questions being published on our website on or before Friday, September 27th at 5 p.m. As you guys know, this grant program is designed in order to assist municipalities in applying for their watershed permit or a de minimis load application. And we are looking to fund those entities who are looking to do planning projects and activities that contribute to their watershed permit. So I'm open to taking any questions that you all may have at this time.
Oh, now don't everybody all jump up at once.
Hi, this is Mark Nelson. I could ask one question,
Sure.
and I don't have great internet connection, so I'm sorry the video's not on. But working with the town of Brewster, we're looking at the Herring River watershed with a lot of freshwater ponds in the watershed. So it complicates the analysis because of the attenuation, but there's also benefits of managing water quality with ponds in the watershed. And I'm just wondering if it's looking at meeting the watershed permit obligations and also supporting a pond. Is that something that's eligible under this program?
So this program is specifically speaking to the watershed permits and activities that are for planning in the natural resource nitrogen sensitive areas. So not necessarily speaking to planning around ponds at this time.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Thank you.
And then I think I saw one in the chat asking for some examples of planning activities. So we do have some of these listed in the RFR. So any planning activities that are necessary to complete a watershed permit application or de minimis load application. So this would include completing a watershed management plan, CWMP or comprehensive watershed management plan, TWMP or scientific evaluation, assessment of nitrogen loads or modeling of nitrogen reduction scenarios. Planning activities required by an approved watershed permit are also included under this project. So it may include data analysis of ambient water quality monitoring results or permeable reactive barrier design as examples, but not limiting to those actions. And also review of ambient water quality monitoring, modeling, and or other methods of demonstrating a de minimis load within the watershed or sub-watershed. No problem. And I believe if you had specific activities you were considering, you could send me an email asking if it's eligible, and that can be answered with the official Q&A answers.
This is Mark again. Can I just follow up on this ponds question, because I've been thinking about it a little bit here. But if a town is looking at treating nitrogen in the watershed area that's under jurisdiction. And they're doing it in an area that is also helping a pond. If you can show that it has a benefit to the watershed and to the estuary, is that eligible? Even if it has a secondary benefit?
I believe so, yes, as long as it's meeting the conditions of the grant opportunity, which is supporting the watershed, the creation or planning activities of a watershed permit or de minimis load.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Val Peter, Town of Dennis. I just had a couple of quick questions. We're undergoing the wastewater project over in Dennis, and we filed NOIs for 3 watersheds. The next step is to then file the watershed for the watershed permit. Just curious what the level of effort is involved with doing that.
Sure, yeah. So I think somebody from our Southeast region might be able to speak better to that question. So I'm happy to facilitate that connection. But just from my level of knowledge, the watershed planning permit will include a timeline with
Yeah.
activities to complete by certain milestone dates.
Yeah, the 20-year, and there's milestones throughout, and revisiting the milestones may have to make some adjustments and periodically. And so just as far as filing for the permit, is that a huge effort? Is that something that I should be looking to our consultants to do, or is this something?
Again, so I think it's how you would like to complete it is totally up to you. I know there are towns that are working with consultants in order to get that done. And I believe that is also work that's fundable under this grant opportunity.
That's something that I'd like to, definitely explore.
Prior funding, prior grantees have definitely used this funding for consultants to assist with the watershed permit applications. You might want to talk with probably some of the other people you see in this room offline about costs and things like that. We can't, not what we do, but certainly I see where you're going with this, and if you do put together an application, you'll obviously want to cost out how much effort it is. It appears by looking at them, just as the person who receives the final report, that there's a lot of work that goes into them. They're very impressive, pretty reports. I'm not the science in this duo. I just do grant administration, but
Sure.
I suspect there are some other people in here who have been through this, who might be able to tell you what that's like on the ground.
Yeah, I'm looking at the ground amounts, 20,000 to 350,000 per applicant. So
depending on how many watersheds you have and how many applications and how complicated your watershed is, there's, everybody's got slightly different geologic conditions to work with, that it may, and marginally different soil conditions, that there's variation, but it's definitely, in terms of if you wanted to do it in-house, I would look very closely at, which is not to say that you can't do it in-house, but it's a lot of work. And I don't know how much you already do, but I suspect it's a lot. So
anything I could do to have the consultants do, definitely would help. So is Carolyn, Courtney, yourself, and who else is on from DEP? I can't see.
Nicole.
Oh, Nicole. Okay.
So I'm happy to send you or connect you with some people from the Southeast region too. Just they would have more knowledge speaking to the actual process of the watershed permit application. So that a good contact would be Maggie Leary.
Maggie. And how about Drew? How about Drew?
Drew's also a great contact. Yes.
Gerard as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Yeah, this has caught my attention, and definitely.
Your fellow Cape Towns are largely in the same boat, so most of your peers in that neighborhood are Like, I always encourage peer support.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, Greg Berman's volunteering. He can also tell you about some of the pain of the contracting process that I put him through this year.
I would never admit to that.
I fully admit that at one point I had to reject a contract and I wasn't even sure why I had to reject it. And I was like, let's go scream in our cars. Let's do it. It's gonna be and we got through it.
Yeah, because you sent me the link, you have my email address already. So, or should I post it on the chat or what?
That is somewhat up to you how you want to handle that.
Okay, thank you.
But I suspect as a public employee, you're probably findable in terms of your email. Does anybody else have any questions?
And it's not your last opportunity. You can definitely send me an email from now until 5 p.m. on the 13th with any of these questions, and they'll be included in the Q&A document.
Thank you.
And I'm happy. Let me put my email in the chat one more time, or I didn't do it already today, but just so anybody who doesn't have it can access it easily.
May I ask one final question just to confirm? The project that would be submitted, the work under the grant would have to be completed by the end of next June. Is that correct?
Yes,
Even if
that is
the work
correct.
continues, the scope of the grant has to end then.
Yes.
Okay.
So we understand that some of these may jump fiscal years. It's the strangest thing. Your projects might take longer to do on a permit, but for the portion of the project that DEP is paying for, that needs to be completed during this fiscal year, which for us is July 1st through June 30.
Okay, thank you.
And Courtney, we are funding like retrospectively, right? If they
We
started.
are, so reimbursements are eligible on this grant. So if you are currently doing work during this fiscal year and you want to apply for that project, you can potentially be reimbursed, provided that the expenses are eligible. So if your project includes buying a trampoline, I'm not going to reimburse that, though I will say that that is a ton of fun. Just don't put it on public property because that'll be a nightmare to insure. But I will catch that. But otherwise, if it's eligible, you can submit that for reimbursement as part of your grant. Okay, we're gonna auction the end off here. It's going once. It's going twice. All right, 3 times. Thank you guys for your time this afternoon. Thank you for your interest, and we wish you luck. And
Thank
again,
you.
questions if you've got them, still got time.
Thank you
Great,
very
thank
much.
you.
Take it easy, everybody. Have a good day.
Bye, everyone.